What happened when you recorded your mother without them knowing? The ceramic coffee mug exploded against the kitchen wall, sending brown liquid streaming down the white paint like dried blood. I didn't even flinch anymore. I'd learned that reacting only made things worse. You absolute waste of space. Mom's voice cracked with rage as she whirled around to face me, her perfectly styled blonde hair now wild around her flushed face. Do you have any idea how much that mug cost? $37. $37 because you can't be bothered to load the dishwasher properly. It was 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I knew because I'd been checking the clock obsessively, counting down the minutes until Dad got home at 6:15. 2.5 hours. I could survive 2.5 hours. I'm sorry, Mom. I'll clean it up. Sorry. She let out a harsh laugh that made my stomach clench. You're always sorry, aren't you, Marcus? Sorry. But you never actually change anything, do you? You just keep being the same pathetic disappointment you've always been. The recording app on my phone felt like it was burning through my jeans pocket. I downloaded it 3 days ago after the last incident, the one where she'd screamed at me for 2 hours because I'd forgotten to take the chicken out of the freezer, then told Dad I'd been a bit moody when he asked why the house felt tense. I'd watched him nod sympathetically at her, his hand rubbing her shoulder while she played the role of the long-suffering mother dealing with a difficult teenager. Look at me when I'm talking to you. Her manicured hand slammed down on the granite countertop so hard I was surprised it didn't crack. You can't even show me the basic respect of eye contact. Your father and I have given you everything, this house, your car, your phone, and this is how you repay us. By being a lazy, ungrateful little. I forced myself to meet her eyes, those cold blue eyes that everyone else saw as warm and loving. The eyes that lit up when the neighbors were around, when Dad was home, when anyone else might witness her interactions with her son. But now they were ice, cutting through me like I was nothing. Mrs. Henderson called me today, she continued, her voice dropping to that dangerous whisper that somehow felt worse than the shouting. She said she saw you walking home from school instead of driving. Want to explain why? My mouth went dry. I'd loaned my car to my girlfriend Sarah because hers was in the shop, but explaining that would just give Mom more ammunition. Sarah was another target she loved to attack, too pretty, too distracting, probably just using me. Why couldn't I focus on my grades instead of chasing after girls? I just wanted to walk, I said quietly. You wanted to walk. She repeated my words like they tasted bitter. So you decide to embarrass our family by having the neighbors see you trudging down Maple Street like some kind of homeless person. Do you know what Mrs. Henderson probably thinks of us now? Of me? And there it was. The real issue wasn't my walking home or the mug or the dishwasher. It was never about what I'd actually done. It was about her image, her reputation as the perfect mother with the perfect family in the perfect house on Elmwood Drive. My phone seemed to pulse in my pocket, waiting. You know what I think happened? Mom stepped closer, and I caught a whiff of her expensive perfume mixed with something sharper, the wine she'd been sipping since noon. I think you let that little girlfriend of yours borrow your car. Again. My heart hammered against my ribs. How did she always know? I think you're so desperate to impress some girl who's going to dump you the second she graduates that you'll hand over everything we've worked to give you. The car we bought you for your birthday, $17,000, Marcus. $17,000 so you could have reliable transportation, and you treat it like a toy to share with your friends. Sarah needed. Sarah. The name exploded out of her like a curse. I am so sick of hearing about Sarah. What about what I need? What about showing your own mother some consideration? I needed you to pick up my prescription from CVS today, but oh wait, she threw her hands up in mock surprise. You couldn't, because you gave away your car. I hadn't known about the prescription. She'd never asked me to pick anything up. But pointing that out would be useless, it would just become another example of how I never listened, how I was too selfish to anticipate her needs. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence. 3:52 p.m. And don't think I don't know about last weekend, she continued, starting to pace in that predatory way that meant she was building up to something big. Jennifer Morrison saw you and Sarah at Starbucks on Saturday afternoon. You told me you were studying at the library. My stomach dropped. Such a stupid, harmless lie, but I'd learned that telling Mom I was going on dates just triggered lectures about my priorities and my grades and how girls were just a distraction from my future. It had seemed easier to avoid the conflict. I can see it on your face. You thought you were so clever, didn't you? Sneaking around, lying to my face. Her voice was getting higher, more shrill. I raised you better than this, Marcus. I sacrificed everything for you, my career, my body, my social life, and you repay me by becoming a liar and a sneak. The recording app was 2 taps away. Just unlock the phone, tap the app, tap record. My fingers twitched toward my pocket. Do you have any idea what I gave up when I had you? She was in full swing now, the words pouring out in that familiar torrent of resentment and rage. I had a marketing position at Dalton and Associates. $55,000 a year, plus benefits. But I quit to be a stay-at-home mom because I thought, foolishly, apparently, that my son deserved better than daycare. That my son deserved a mother who was present and involved. This was the script. The same monologue I'd heard dozens of times, with slight variations depending on what had triggered her that day. How she'd sacrificed her career for me. How I was ungrateful. How disappointed she was. How much better her life could have been. Look at this house. She gestured wildly around our pristine kitchen with its marble countertops and stainless steel appliances. Look at your life. Private tennis lessons, SAT prep courses, college fund, we've given you everything, and you can't even manage to load a dishwasher or tell your mother the truth about where you're going. My phone felt heavier in my pocket. 2 taps away from proof. But what would happen after I pressed record? The thought of consequences froze my hand halfway to my pocket. What if she found out I was recording? What if she demanded to see my phone right now, like she sometimes did when she was convinced I was hiding something? The punishment for secretly recording her would be nuclear, probably involving the police, lawyers, violation of privacy. She'd find a way to make me the criminal. But then her voice cut through my hesitation like a blade. You know what your problem is, Marcus. You're weak. Just like your father's brother David. She spat out my uncle's name like poison. Same pathetic inability to take responsibility for anything. Remember what happened to him? 43 years old and still living in that studio apartment, blaming everyone else for his failures. Uncle David had killed himself 2 years ago. She knew exactly what she was doing bringing him up. My fingers found my phone before I could lose my nerve. Unlock screen. Tap the app. The red record button stared back at me. Are you even listening to me? Mom's hand slammed the counter again. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You just zone out whenever someone tries to give you guidance. No wonder your grades are slipping. I tapped record. 3:54 p.m. My grades aren't slipping, I said carefully, trying to keep my voice steady. I have a 3.7 GPA. A 3.7. She laughed bitterly. Princeton requires a 3.9 minimum, Marcus. Harvard wants a 4.0 or higher. Do you think a 3.7 is going to get you into medical school? Do you think any respectable university is going to look twice at mediocre grades from someone who can't even manage basic household responsibilities? I'd never said I wanted to go to Princeton or Harvard. I'd never said I wanted to be a doctor. But Mom had decided these things for me when I was 14, and any attempt to discuss other options was met with accusations of laziness and lack of ambition. Dr. Peterson's son got into Yale with a full scholarship, she continued, her voice taking on that comparison tone that made my chest tighten. Full scholarship, Marcus. Do you know why? Because he focused on what mattered instead of wasting time with girls and friends and walking places like some kind of vagrant. The phone in my pocket was capturing every word. Every cruel comparison, every cutting remark, every moment of the psychological warfare I'd been enduring for years. But instead of feeling victorious, I felt sick. Maybe I should call Dr. Peterson and ask her how she motivates her son, Mom mused, tapping her manicured nails against the counter. Because clearly, my approach isn't working. Clearly, I'm failing as a mother since my son thinks lying and mediocrity are acceptable. The self-pity angle. Another classic move. Paint herself as the victim of my supposed failures, as the devoted mother who just couldn't understand where she'd gone wrong. I'm not mediocre, Mom. Really? Her eyebrows shot up in exaggerated surprise. Because from where I'm standing, I see a 17-year-old boy who can't load a dishwasher correctly, lies about his whereabouts, loans out his car without permission, and thinks a 3.7 GPA is something to be proud of. If that's not mediocre, what would you call it? The recording continued, invisible and silent, documenting everything. But as her words kept coming, as her voice grew sharper and more vicious, I realized I was crossing a line I could never uncross. This wasn't just about protecting myself anymore. This was about destroying the carefully constructed lie our family lived every single day. The recording hit the 4-minute mark as Mom's voice reached that particular pitch that meant she was just getting started. I'd learned to recognize the signs, the way her shoulders tensed, how her breathing became shallow and rapid, the dangerous glitter in her eyes that said we were nowhere near finished. And another thing, she continued, spinning around to face the mess of coffee and ceramic shards on the floor. Look at this disaster. Just look at it. Do you know how long I spent cleaning this kitchen this morning? 2 hours, Marcus. 2 hours scrubbing and organizing because God forbid your father comes home to anything less than perfection. She grabbed a dish towel and threw it at me. It hit my chest and dropped to the floor. Clean it up. Now. And when you're done, you're going to call Sarah and tell her you can't see her anymore. My blood went cold. What? You heard me. Mom crossed her arms, and I could see the satisfaction in her face at my shock. This little romance is clearly interfering with your priorities. Your grades, your responsibilities, your respect for your family. So it ends today. Mom, you can't. I can't what? Her voice went deadly quiet. I can't parent my own son. I can't make decisions about what's best for your future. Watch me. My phone felt like it was burning through my jeans. Every word was being recorded, but the evidence felt meaningless against the immediate panic rising in my chest. Sarah was the only person who truly understood what I was dealing with at home. She'd seen the aftermath of these sessions, the way I'd be quiet and withdrawn for days, the way I'd flinch when adults raised their voices, the careful way I'd phrase everything to avoid triggering another explosion. Sarah hasn't done anything wrong, I said, my voice cracking. Sarah has done everything wrong. Mom's composure finally snapped completely. She's turned you into a liar. She's made you secretive and sneaky and disrespectful. Before her, you were focused. You were motivated. You were the son I raised you to be. None of that was true. The lying had started years before I'd even met Sarah, tiny white lies to avoid Mom's interrogations about every detail of my day, every friend I talked to, every minute I spent away from the house. Sarah had actually made things better. She'd helped me realize that other families didn't operate like this, that 17-year-olds were allowed to have girlfriends and social lives without detailed cross-examinations. I'm not breaking up with her, I said quietly. The words hung in the air like a challenge. I'd never directly defied her before, not like this. I'd always found ways to comply or compromise or redirect her anger. But something about knowing the recording was running, knowing that this conversation would exist beyond this moment, made me feel suddenly, dangerously brave. Mom's face went through several expressions, surprise, rage, then something calculating and cold. Oh, you're not. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. That's interesting. Because I have Dr. Matthews' number right here. You remember Dr. Matthews, don't you? Sarah's mother. My stomach plummeted. Dar. Matthews was a pediatrician at Riverside Medical, one of Mom's tennis partners, and definitely someone who would take a concerned mother's call seriously. I think Dr. Matthews would be very interested to know that her daughter has been a, shall we say, negative influence on you. I think she'd want to know about the lying, the sneaking around, the way Sarah seems to encourage your worst behaviors. Don't call her Mom, I whispered. Then you'll call Sarah right now and end it. Mom held out her phone like a weapon. Right now, Marcus. I want to hear you tell her that you need to focus on your studies and that you can't see her anymore. The kitchen clock showed 4:01 p.m. Still over 2 hours until Dad got home. The recording was capturing everything, but what good would it do if Mom destroyed my relationship with Sarah today? What good would evidence be if she'd already scorched everything that mattered to me? I'm waiting, Mom said, her finger hovering over Dr. Matthews' contact. 5 seconds to decide, Marcus. Make the call yourself, or I make a much worse one. My hands were shaking as I stared at her phone. The recording app was still running in my pocket, capturing every second of this nightmare, but it felt useless against the immediate threat she was holding over me. Dr. Matthews would believe her. Mom was charming and convincing when she needed to be, and she had 17 years of practice spinning stories about my difficult behavior. 3 seconds, Marcus. Okay, I said quickly. Okay, I'll call her. The triumph in Mom's eyes made me sick. She handed me her phone, and I could see she'd already pulled up Sarah's number. My finger hovered over the call button while my mind raced. Sarah would be in AP chemistry right now, she wouldn't answer during class. But that might buy me time to think of something, anything, to get out of this. I pressed call and held the phone to my ear, praying for voicemail. Hello. Sarah's voice was confused, she wouldn't recognize Mom's number. My heart sank. She must have stepped out of class. Mom was watching me with those cold, satisfied eyes, standing close enough to hear both sides of the conversation. Hey, it's Marcus, I said, my voice sounding hollow. Marcus? Why are you calling from a different number? Are you okay? You sound weird. Mom stepped closer, her presence like a physical weight pressing down on me. The coffee stain on the wall behind her looked like a blood spatter in my peripheral vision. I need to tell you something, I started, then stopped. The words wouldn't come. 8 months of dating Sarah, of having someone who actually cared about me, of feeling like maybe I wasn't the worthless disappointment Mom claimed I was, and I was supposed to destroy it all with a phone call. Marcus? Sarah's voice was getting worried. What's going on? Mom's finger moved toward her own phone, threatening Dr. Matthews' number. Her message was clear, say the words or I will. I think we should. I swallowed hard, unable to look at Mom's face. I think we should take a break. Silence on the other end. Then, what? Why? Did something happen? I just need to focus on school right now. The script felt like swallowing glass. College applications, SATs, you know. Marcus, this is crazy. Yesterday you were talking about prom, and now you want to break up. Something's wrong. Are you at home? Is your mom there? The question hit like a lightning bolt. Sarah knew. She'd always known something was off about my home life, even though I tried to hide the worst of it. I'd made excuses for why she could never come over when Mom was home, why I got anxious when my phone buzzed with texts from home, why I sometimes went quiet for days after family dinners. Mom's expression sharpened. She'd heard the question too. No, I lied. This is what I want, Sarah. I'm sorry. I don't believe you. Her voice was getting stronger, more determined. Marcus, if someone is making you do this. Mom snatched the phone from my hand before I could react. Hello, Sarah. Her voice transformed instantly into the warm, concerned tone she used for other parents. This is Mrs. Chen, Marcus's mother. I'm so sorry you had to hear this over the phone, sweetheart, but Marcus has been struggling with anxiety lately, and his therapist thinks romantic relationships might be too much pressure right now. I stared at her in horror. I didn't have a therapist. But Sarah wouldn't know that, and Mom sounded so convincing, so caring and professional. We're just trying to do what's best for his mental health, Mom continued, her free hand reaching out to squeeze my shoulder in a gesture that looked maternal but felt like a vice. I'm sure you understand. You're such a smart, caring girl. I couldn't hear Sarah's response, but I could see Mom's satisfied smile growing wider. Of course, dear. Take care of yourself. Mom ended the call and handed the phone back to me like nothing had happened. The recording was still running. Every lie, every manipulation, every second of psychological warfare, it was all there, stored in my phone like evidence of a crime. But it felt like the crime was being committed against my entire life. There, Mom said, setting her phone down on the counter with deliberate precision. That wasn't so difficult, was it? Sometimes we have to make hard choices for our own good. The recording hit the 8-minute mark. 8 minutes of documented psychological torture, and somehow I felt more trapped than before I'd started it. Mom was already moving on, humming softly as she grabbed the broom from the pantry closet, acting like she hadn't just systematically destroyed my relationship through manipulation and lies. Clean up that coffee while I sweep the ceramic, she said pleasantly, as if we were just two people tidying up after a minor accident. And Marcus? I think we should keep this conversation between us. Your father has enough stress at work without worrying about teenage drama at home. There it was, the final piece of her strategy. The silence. The complicity she demanded from me in maintaining the fiction of our happy family. How many times had I heard those exact words? Asterisk, your father doesn't need to know about this. This stays between us. Why upset him over nothing? Asterisk. My phone buzzed against my leg. A text message. Then another. Sarah trying to reach me, probably confused and hurt by the conversation she'd just had. Mom's eyes flicked toward my pocket. You should turn that off, she said, still in that unnaturally calm voice. Constant notifications are so disruptive. Very bad for focus and concentration. I pulled out my phone, and my blood turned to ice. The recording app was still open on my screen, the red recording indicator clearly visible, the timer showing 8:47 and counting. If Mom saw it. What's taking so long? Mom stepped toward me, craning her neck to see the screen. I fumbled with the phone, trying to close the app without being obvious, but my hands were shaking too badly. The red dot seemed to pulse like a beacon. 8:52, 8:53. Just turning off notifications, I mumbled, finally managing to switch to the home screen just as Mom reached my side. Good boy. She patted my shoulder again, and I fought the urge to flinch away. You know, Marcus, these conversations are hard, but they're necessary. When you're older, when you're successful and happy, you'll understand that everything I do is because I love you. The word love sounded obscene in her mouth after what had just happened. But this was how it always ended. The storm would pass, she'd shift into nurturing mode, and by the time Dad got home at 6:15, she'd be the picture of maternal concern. Asterisk Marcus seemed a bit upset today. Teenage stress, you know how it is. I made his favorite pasta for dinner, asterisk. My phone buzzed again. Then again. Sarah wasn't giving up. I said turn it off, Marcus. Mom's voice carried a warning edge beneath the pleasant tone. I quickly switched the phone to silent, but I could see her watching my every movement. The recording app was still there in my recent apps, one swipe away from being discovered. Actually, Mom said, extending her hand, why don't you give me the phone for the rest of the day? Just until you've had time to process everything. Sometimes we make poor decisions when we're emotional. My heart hammered against my ribs. The phone contained not just the recording, but text conversations with Sarah about Mom's behavior, search history for things like emotional abuse and narcissistic parents, photos of previous damage from Mom's rages. It was a digital diary of everything she put me through. I need it for homework, I said weakly. Research for my history paper. You can use the computer in the den. Under supervision. Mom's hand remained extended, palm up, waiting. Phone, Marcus. Now. 4:09 p.m. Still over 2 hours until Dad got home, and she was asking for the one thing that could expose everything. The recording was still running, I could see the app in my peripheral vision, the timer hitting 9:21. But if I gave her the phone now, she'd find it within minutes. She always went through my messages when she confiscated it. Mom, please. The phone, Marcus. Her voice dropped to that dangerous whisper again. Don't make me ask a third time. The ceramic shards crunched under my feet as I shifted my weight, still clutching the phone. 9.5 minutes of evidence, but what good would it do if she destroyed it right now? What good would proof be if I never got the chance to use it? My finger hovered over the power button. If I turned the phone off, the recording would stop, but it would be saved automatically. But powering down in front of her would look suspicious. Why would I turn off a phone I was about to hand over? I'm waiting, Mom said, and I could hear her patience wearing thin. The pleasant mask was starting to slip, revealing the storm brewing underneath. The coffee stain on the wall seemed to mock me. Evidence of her rage, but meaningless because no one else had witnessed it. Just like the recording would be meaningless if she found and deleted it before anyone else could hear it. My phone felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds as I slowly raised it toward her waiting hand. Then something miraculous happened. The doorbell rang. Mom's hand froze halfway between us, her head snapping toward the front hallway like a predator sensing danger. The melodic chime of our Westminster doorbell had never sounded so beautiful. Are you expecting someone? She asked, her voice already shifting into that careful, controlled tone she used when other people might be watching. No, I said, slipping my phone back into my pocket in one smooth motion. Maybe it's a delivery. The doorbell rang again, followed by a firm knock. Mom's jaw tightened with frustration, but she couldn't ignore it. Our house sat on a corner lot with huge front windows. Whoever was at the door could potentially see straight into our kitchen if they walked around to the side yard. Stay right here, she hissed under her breath. We're not finished with this conversation. But I could already see the transformation beginning. Her shoulders straightened, her expression softened, and she ran a quick hand through her hair to smooth the wild strands. By the time she reached the front door, she'd be the perfect suburban mother once again. I heard her heels clicking across the hardwood floor, then the sound of the front door opening. Oh my goodness, Dr. Matthews. What a lovely surprise. My blood turned to ice. Sarah's mom was here. The same Dr. Matthews that Mom had just threatened to call, standing on our doorstep less than 10 minutes after that horrible phone conversation. This couldn't be a coincidence. Hello, Patricia. I hope I'm not interrupting anything. Dr. Matthews' voice carried that professional authority that came from 20 years of dealing with parents and teenagers. I was wondering if I could have a quick word with you and Marcus. The recording app was still running. 11:43 and counting. Every second of this conversation would be captured, but I had no idea if that was good or catastrophic. Of course. Please, come in. Marcus is just cleaning up a little accident in the kitchen. You know how teenage boys can be. Mom's laugh was bright and artificial, the sound of it making my stomach churn. Their footsteps approached the kitchen, and I quickly grabbed the dish towel from the floor, making it look like I'd actually been cleaning the coffee mess. The ceramic shards were still scattered everywhere, and the brown stain on the wall looked even worse under the bright afternoon light streaming through our bay window. Marcus, look who's here. Mom announced as they entered the kitchen. Dr. Matthews wanted to chat with us. Dr. Matthews was a small woman in her 50s with graying hair and intelligent brown eyes that missed nothing. She'd always been kind to me at Sarah's school events and tennis matches, but now those eyes were scanning our kitchen with clinical attention. Taking in the coffee stain, the broken ceramic, my probably shell-shocked expression. Hello, Marcus, she said gently. How are you doing today? I'm okay, I managed, hyper-aware of my phone recording every word. Just clumsy with dishes. Dr. Matthews nodded, but her gaze lingered on the wall behind Mom. Patricia, I have to ask, I just got off the phone with Sarah, and she was quite upset. She said Marcus called her from your phone to break up with her. The question hung in the air like a blade. Mom's smile never wavered, but I caught the slight tightening around her eyes. Oh yes, that. Mom waved her hand dismissively. Marcus has been struggling with anxiety lately, we've been working with a therapist, and romantic relationships seem to be adding pressure he's not ready for. I just helped facilitate a difficult conversation. Dr. Matthews' expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. Which therapist are you working with? I might know them through the medical community. 12:47, the recording captured Mom's momentary pause, the fraction of a second where her perfect composure cracked. Dr. Wilson, Mom said smoothly. At Riverside Behavioral Health. It was a lie, and somehow I knew Dr. Matthews could tell. I see, Dr. Matthews said, her tone remaining perfectly neutral. And how long has Marcus been seeing Dr. Wilson? The recording hit 13 minutes. I watched Mom's face, seeing the micro-calculations happening behind her eyes as she tried to construct a believable timeline. About 6 weeks now, Mom replied. We started after his grades began slipping. A 3.7 GPA might seem acceptable to some parents, but we have higher expectations for Marcus. A 3.7 is actually quite good, Dr. Matthews observed mildly. Sarah mentioned Marcus is taking 4 AP classes this semester. Well, yes, but, Mom's smile flickered slightly. As I'm sure you understand, college admissions are so competitive these days. We want Marcus to have every advantage. Dr. Matthews nodded slowly, then turned to me. Marcus, how do you feel about the breakup? It seemed quite sudden from Sarah's perspective. The question felt like a trap, but I couldn't tell who was setting it. Mom was watching me with laser focus, her earlier threat about Dr. Matthews still fresh in my mind. But there was something in Dr. Matthews' expression, a careful attention that felt different from idle curiosity. It's hard, I said carefully, but Mom thinks it's best for my mental health right now. And what do you think is best for your mental health? The question caught both Mom and me off guard. It was so direct, so focused on my opinion rather than my parents' decisions. I felt Mom's tension spike beside me. Well, Mom interjected with a light laugh, I think we all know 17-year-olds aren't always the best judges of what's healthy for them. That's why they need parents to guide them. Of course, Dr. Matthews agreed pleasantly. Though in my practice, I found that teenagers often have valuable insights into their own emotional needs. She looked around the kitchen again, her gaze stopping on the coffee stain. That's quite a mess. What happened here? Just a clumsy moment, Mom said quickly. I knocked over my mug while reaching for something in the cabinet. You know how it is, afternoon coffee and multitasking don't always mix well. The lie was so smooth, so practiced. If I hadn't been standing here when it happened, if I hadn't watched her throw the mug in rage, I might have believed it myself. This was exactly what had been happening for years, reality being rewritten in real time, my experiences invalidated before they could even be processed. But the recording was still running. 14:22 and counting. I should probably clean this up properly, I said, desperate to fill the growing silence. Before it stains permanently. Oh, don't worry about that right now, Dr. Matthews said. I was actually hoping we could all sit down and talk for a few minutes. If that's all right with you, Patricia. Mom's smile grew more forced. Of course, though I'm not sure what there is to discuss. Marcus and Sarah are lovely kids, but sometimes young relationships run their course naturally. Actually, Dr. Matthews said, settling herself against the kitchen island like she planned to stay a while. Sarah was quite concerned about Marcus when she called me. She said the conversation felt forced, like someone was making him say those things. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Mom's laugh came out just a beat too late to sound natural. Oh goodness, teenage drama. You know how kids can be, always looking for conspiracy theories instead of accepting simple explanations. Mom moved closer to me, her hand landing on my shoulder in what looked like maternal support but felt like a warning. Marcus, tell Dr. Matthews that nobody forced you to make that call. The weight of her hand, the slight pressure of her fingers, the careful emphasis on the word nobody, it was all being recorded. Every manipulative gesture, every subtle threat. But Dr. Matthews was watching it all with those sharp, clinical eyes. Marcus, she prompted gently. How would you describe the conversation that led to calling Sarah? The question hung in the air like a live wire. Dr. Matthews was watching me with those penetrating eyes, Mom's fingers were digging into my shoulder like claws, and my phone continued recording at 15:47 and counting. Everything felt balanced on a knife's edge. It was. I started, then stopped. The truth wanted to pour out, about the screaming, the threats, the manipulation. But Mom's grip tightened on my shoulder, a clear warning. It was a conversation about priorities, I said finally, hating how hollow my voice sounded. College applications are coming up, and we decided dating might be a distraction. Dr. Matthews nodded slowly, but her expression remained skeptical. And you came to this decision together? You and your mother discussed it calmly. Of course we did, Mom interjected smoothly. Marcus and I have always had excellent communication. We can discuss difficult topics without drama or conflict. The irony was so thick it was suffocating. Less than 20 minutes ago, she'd been screaming about Uncle David's suicide and calling me worthless. Now she was painting us as the picture of healthy family communication. That's wonderful, Dr. Matthews said, her tone remaining neutral. Sarah mentioned that Marcus has seemed stressed lately. Withdrawn. She was worried he might be dealing with something difficult at home. Mom's laugh had an edge to it now. Well, I'm sure Sarah means well, but she's 17. Teenage girls do tend toward melodrama, don't they? Marcus has been perfectly fine at home, haven't you, sweetheart? The endearment felt like acid on my skin. She never called me sweetheart unless other people were around. He's been a little moody, Mom continued, but that's normal for boys his age. Hormones, academic pressure, you know how it is. Dr. Matthews turned to me again. Marcus, have you been feeling moody lately? The recording hit 16 minutes. I could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on me, keep lying to protect the family image, or tell the truth and detonate everything. Sometimes, I admitted. School can be stressful. What about home? Dr. Matthews asked. Do you feel stressed at home too? Mom's fingers dug deeper into my shoulder. Marcus has a very comfortable home life, she said quickly. We've given him everything he could need, his own car, a beautiful room, college prep courses. Some might say we've spoiled him a bit. I wasn't asking you, Patricia, Dr. Matthews said quietly, her voice carrying unmistakable authority. I was asking Marcus. The directness of it stunned both of us. Mom's hand actually loosened on my shoulder as she processed being essentially told to be quiet in her own kitchen. Home is fine, I said, but the words came out wrong. Too fast, too defensive. Dr. Matthews studied my face for a long moment. Marcus, would it be possible for us to talk privately for a few minutes? Sometimes teenagers feel more comfortable discussing things without their parents present. Oh, that won't be necessary, Mom said immediately, her voice tight despite her bright smile. Marcus tells me everything. We don't have secrets in this family. The lie was so blatant that I almost laughed. Our entire family was built on secrets, Mom's rages that Dad never witnessed, the careful way I edited every story about school or friends, the elaborate performances we put on whenever outsiders were around. I'm sure you have a wonderful relationship, Dr. Matthews said diplomatically. But as a medical professional, I sometimes find that adolescents benefit from having a neutral adult to talk with. It's not about secrets, it's about giving them space to process their own emotions. Mom's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I appreciate your concern, but I think I know what's best for my own son. Of course, Dr. Matthews agreed. Though Marcus is old enough to express his own preferences about who he talks to. She looked at me directly. Would you like to have a private conversation, Marcus? Just for a few minutes. The recording was at 17:23. This was it, the moment where I either took the lifeline being offered or let it slip away forever. But the consequences felt enormous. If I said yes, Mom would know something was wrong. She'd spend the rest of the day, until Dad got home, making sure I understood exactly what would happen if I'd said anything inappropriate to Dr. Matthews. But if I said no, Dr. Matthews might leave, and I might never get another chance like this. I guess that would be okay, I said quietly. Mom's smile became razor-sharp. Actually, I don't think that's appropriate. Marcus is a minor, and I'm his mother. Any conversations about his mental health should include me. That's certainly you're right, Dr. Matthews said calmly. Though I should mention that Sarah asked me to check on Marcus specifically because she was worried about his well-being. If there are concerns about a teenager's mental health, I do have certain professional obligations to explore them thoroughly. The words carried weight that made Mom go very still beside me. Professional obligations. The kind that might involve other authorities if a medical professional suspected something was wrong. The kitchen clock showed 4:23 p.m. Still almost 2 hours until Dad got home, but suddenly that felt less important. The recording in my pocket had captured nearly 18 minutes of evidence, and now there was a witness standing in our kitchen, someone who was asking the right questions and paying attention to the wrong answers. For the first time in years, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't completely alone. The recording hit 18 minutes as Dr. Matthews and Mom faced off across our kitchen island. The tension was so thick I could barely breathe, but then Mom's phone buzzed against the granite countertop. She glanced at it, and I saw her entire expression shift. Oh my, she said, her voice suddenly lighter. That's Dr. Wilson's office calling me back. About Marcus's appointment scheduling. She looked at Dr. Matthews with triumphant satisfaction. What perfect timing. Would you like to speak with his therapist directly? I'm sure she could address any concerns you might have. My stomach plummeted. There was no Dr. Wilson. There was no therapist. But Mom was already reaching for her phone with complete confidence, like she was about to prove everything she'd been saying. Actually, Dr. Matthews said carefully, I'd still prefer to speak with Marcus first. Professional courtesy, I always like to hear directly from the patient before consulting with their treatment team. Treatment team. Mom's laugh had a slight edge now. It's just anxiety management, not brain surgery. Really, Yar. Matthews, I think you might be making this more complicated than it needs to be. The phone stopped buzzing, but Mom was still holding it like a shield. I realized what was happening, she was bluffing. Banking on Dr. Matthews backing down rather than actually calling her out on the lie. It was a calculated risk, and I could see her weighing the odds behind her bright smile. Patricia, Dr. Matthews said quietly, I've been practicing pediatric medicine for 22 years. I've learned to trust my instincts when something doesn't feel right about a situation. What exactly are you implying? Mom's voice stayed level, but I caught the dangerous undertone that meant she was getting truly angry. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating directly that I'd like to speak with Marcus alone, and that as a healthcare professional, I have concerns about his emotional well-being based on what I've observed today. The words hit like a bomb. Mom's carefully constructed facade cracked just enough for me to see the rage building underneath. Her knuckles were white where she gripped her phone, and that familiar muscle in her jaw was starting to twitch. Observed? Mom repeated, her voice getting dangerously soft. And what exactly have you observed in the 10 minutes you've been in my home? Dr. Matthews looked around the kitchen deliberately, the coffee stain on the wall, the ceramic shard still scattered across the floor, my obvious tension. I've observed a teenager who appears anxious and frightened. I've observed inconsistencies in explanations about his mental health treatment. And I've observed a family dynamic that raises some red flags for me professionally. The recording captured the moment Mom's mask finally slipped completely. Her face went cold and hard, all pretense of maternal warmth evaporating. Red flags? Her voice was ice. In my own home. About my own son. Dr. Matthews, I think you've overstepped your bounds here. Marcus is fine. Our family is fine. And I don't appreciate having my parenting questioned by someone who's clearly been influenced by teenage dramatics. Sarah wasn't being dramatic, Dr. Matthews said firmly. She was scared for someone she cares about. And frankly, after spending 20 minutes here, I understand why. 4:27 p.m. The recording was at 21 minutes and counting. Everything was spiraling out of control, but somehow I felt more hopeful than terrified. Someone was finally seeing through Mom's performance. Someone was finally asking the questions I'd been desperate for anyone to ask. But Mom wasn't finished yet. I think you need to leave, she said, setting her phone down with deliberate precision. Right now. This conversation is over, and you're no longer welcome in my home. Dr. Matthews didn't move. Marcus, she said, looking directly at me, do you want me to leave? The question hung in the air like a lifeline. Mom's eyes were boring into me, promising consequences I couldn't even imagine if I answered wrong. But my phone was still recording, Dr. Matthews was still standing in our kitchen, and for the first time in years, someone was giving me an actual choice. No, I whispered. Please don't go. The words escaped my mouth before I could stop them, and the effect was immediate. Mom's face went completely white, then flushed deep red. The recording hit 22 minutes as the silence stretched between us like a chasm. Excuse me. Mom's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried more menace than all her earlier screaming combined. What did you just say? Dr. Matthews stepped closer to me, and I could feel her creating a physical barrier between Mom and me. Marcus asked me to stay, Patricia. And given what I'm seeing here, I think that's exactly what I should do. You think, Mom started, then seemed to remember where she was. Her voice dropped to that dangerous whisper I knew so well. Dr. Matthews, I'm going to ask you one more time to leave my house. This is a private family matter, and your presence is making everything worse. Actually, I think my presence is making everything clearer, Dr. Matthews replied calmly. Marcus, I want you to know that you have options here. You don't have to handle whatever you're dealing with alone. The word options hit me like electricity. In my world, there were no options. There was only Mom's way, Dad's obliviousness, and my silent compliance to keep the peace. But Dr. Matthews was standing in our kitchen talking about options like they were real things I could actually choose. He's not dealing with anything, Mom snapped, her composure finally cracking completely. Except a teenager's tendency toward melodrama and manipulation. Marcus, tell Dr. Matthews that you're fine. Tell her that this is all just Sarah being hysterical about a perfectly normal breakup. The command in her voice was absolute. This was how it always worked, she'd create chaos and then demand I participate in covering it up. How many times had I stood in this same kitchen, nodding along as she rewrote reality for Dad, for teachers, for anyone who might question our perfect family image. But the recording app was still running. 23 minutes and 12 seconds of evidence that no one could rewrite or reinterpret. I don't think it was normal, I said quietly, my voice gaining strength with each word. The way you made me call Sarah. The things you said about her mother. The way you threw that coffee mug. Mom's intake of breath was sharp and audible. I did not throw anything. I told Dr. Matthews it was an accident. You threw it because I didn't load the dishwasher right, I continued, the truth pouring out now like water through a broken dam. You called me worthless. You said I was just like Uncle David before I caught myself before finishing that sentence, but the damage was already done. Dr. Matthews' expression grew very serious. Before he what, Marcus? Mom was staring at me with naked fury, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of her rage. Someone else was here. Someone else was listening. Someone else could see what was really happening. Before he killed himself, I whispered. 2 years ago. She brings him up whenever she wants to really hurt me. That is enough. Mom's voice was deadly quiet now, more frightening than all her screaming. Marcus, go to your room. Right now. Dr. Matthews, I want you out of my house immediately, or I'm calling the police. But Dr. Matthews didn't flinch. If you call the police, Patricia, we'll all have a conversation about what I've witnessed here today. And I'll be making a report to Child Protective Services regardless. The words Child Protective Services hit the kitchen like a nuclear bomb. Mom actually staggered backward, her face going pale. CPS was her worst nightmare, outside authorities investigating our perfect family, asking questions she couldn't control the answers to. You wouldn't dare, Mom breathed. Try me, Dr. Matthews said simply. 4:31 p.m. The recording captured everything, Mom's threats, my admissions, Dr. Matthews' promise to involve authorities. 24 minutes of evidence that could change everything. But as I looked at Mom's face, twisted with rage and terror, I realized that some bridges, once burned, could never be rebuilt. The standoff lasted exactly 17 seconds, I counted them like heartbeats while the recording app continued capturing everything at 2400 hours 43 and counting. Then Mom did something I'd never seen before in 17 years of living with her. She started to cry. Not the angry tears of frustration I'd witnessed during her rages, but soft, heartbroken sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her chest. Her shoulders shook as she covered her face with her hands, and when she looked up at Dr. Matthews, her eyes were rimmed with red. You don't understand, Mom whispered, her voice completely transformed. I'm trying so hard to be a good mother. Marcus he's been so difficult lately. Lying to me, sneaking around, his grades dropping. I just don't know what to do anymore. I stared at her in absolute shock. This was a performance I'd never seen before, vulnerable, broken, desperately seeking sympathy. But what made my skin crawl was how genuine it looked. If I hadn't been standing here for the past 25 minutes, if I hadn't lived with her for 17 years, I might have believed it myself. I love him so much, Mom continued, tears streaming down her cheeks. But he's been so angry, so disrespectful. Sometimes he scares me with his temper. The mug, I was just trying to get his attention, and he got so violent that I knocked it over trying to get away from him. My mouth fell open. She was rewriting everything in real time, making herself the victim and me the aggressor. It was breathtaking in its audacity. That's not what happened, I said, but my voice sounded weak and uncertain compared to her emotional performance. Dr. Matthews, Mom sobbed, I think Marcus might be having some kind of breakdown. The lying has gotten so much worse, and now he's creating these elaborate stories about things that never happened. I'm terrified he might hurt himself. Or me. Dr. Matthews was watching this performance with clinical attention, her expression unreadable. For a horrible moment, I wondered if Mom was actually winning. She was so convincing, so believable in her maternal anguish. Patricia, Dr. Matthews said carefully, these are serious allegations you're making about your son. I know, Mom whispered, reaching for tissues from the box on our counter. I've been trying to handle it privately, to protect him. But maybe I can't anymore. Maybe he needs more help than I can give him. The threat was crystal clear. She was setting me up as the unstable one, the violent teenager who made up stories and lashed out at his loving mother. If Child Protective Services got involved, this would be the narrative they'd hear, not my version, but hers. Marcus, Dr. Matthews turned to me, how do you respond to what your mother is saying? The recording was still running, 25:58 and counting. Everything was being captured, but would anyone believe my voice over Mom's tears? Would the audio prove anything, or would she claim I'd manipulated it somehow? She's lying, I said, my voice cracking. Everything she just said is a lie. I never threatened her. I never got violent. She threw the mug at the wall because I didn't load the dishwasher the way she wanted. Mom's sobs got louder. Oh honey, please stop. I can't. I can't keep pretending this isn't happening anymore. I'm not lying. The words exploded out of me with more force than I'd intended, and I saw Mom flinch dramatically, as if I'd raised my hand to her. You see, Mom said to Dr. Matthews, her voice shaking. This is what I deal with every day. The anger, the accusations. I just don't know what I've done wrong. 4:34 p.m. Still over an hour before Dad got home, but now I was starting to wonder if that mattered. Mom had just launched a preemptive strike that could destroy any credibility I might have had. Who would believe the angry teenager over the tearful mother? But then Dr. Matthews did something unexpected. She stepped closer to Mom, her expression shifting to something that looked like professional concern. Patricia, if Marcus has been violent or threatening, we need to document these incidents properly. When was the last time he physically intimidated you? The question was a trap, and I could see Mom realize it a split second too late. If she gave specifics, they could be checked. If she stayed vague, it would sound fabricated. It's not always physical, Mom said carefully. It's more psychological. The way he looks at me sometimes, the tone of voice he uses. Can you give me an example of something he said that felt threatening? Mom's tears slowed as she tried to navigate the increasingly specific questions. Well, just today he told me he wasn't going to break up with Sarah. The defiance in his voice, the way it felt aggressive. A 17-year-old saying he doesn't want to break up with his girlfriend felt aggressive to you? Dr. Matthews' tone remained neutral, but there was something sharp underneath it. You don't understand the context, Mom said quickly. The history of disrespect and manipulation. The recording hit 27 minutes as I watched Mom's performance start to unravel under Dr. Matthews' methodical questioning. Each answer made her sound less like a victim and more like someone scrambling to justify the unjustifiable. My phone felt warm against my leg, still capturing every word, every lie, every moment of the most important conversation of my life. 4:36 p.m. 28 minutes and 43 seconds of recording when Dr. Matthews pulled out her own phone. Patricia, I'm going to make a call, she said calmly. I have a colleague at Riverside Behavioral Health, Dr. Jennifer Wilson. I'd like to verify Marcus's treatment with her directly. Mom's face went completely white. That's not necessary. Patient confidentiality. Won't be an issue since you've already discussed his treatment openly with me, Dr. Matthews replied, her fingers already moving across her screen. Unless there's some reason you prefer I not contact Dr. Wilson. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. 15. 20. I watched Mom's mind racing, calculating odds, trying to find an escape route that didn't exist. Actually, Mom said finally, her voice barely steady, I may have misspoken about the name. It might be Dr. Williams. Or Wilson Williams. These medical practices have so many associates, you know how it is. Dar. Matthews lowered her phone but didn't put it away. Patricia, in my experience, parents don't usually forget their child's therapist's name after 6 weeks of treatment. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Mom's tears had stopped completely now, replaced by a calculating coldness that was far more familiar to me. I think there's been a misunderstanding, Mom said, her voice shifting back toward her normal controlled tone. Marcus has been seeing the school counselor, Mrs. Rodriguez, not a private therapist. I may have embellished slightly when I said Dr. Wilson because I was embarrassed about not being able to afford private care. Another lie, smoother than the last. Mrs. Rodriguez had retired in December, but Dr. Matthews wouldn't necessarily know that. Mom was buying time, trying to construct a story that couldn't be easily verified. And Mrs. Rodriguez recommended that Marcus end his relationship with Sarah? Dr. Matthews asked. She recommended that he focus on his academics, yes. College applications are so competitive now, and Marcus's SAT scores could use improvement. Mom was finding her footing again, steering the conversation toward safer ground. We scored a 1340 on the practice test last month. Respectable, but not Ivy League material. I noticed how she said, we scored, like my test performance was somehow her achievement. But more importantly, she'd gotten the number wrong. I'd scored a 1420, but I'd lied and told her it was lower because I knew she'd use any score as ammunition about how I wasn't trying hard enough. A 1340 is actually quite good, Dr. Matthews observed. That puts Marcus in about the 90th percentile nationally. Good isn't good enough anymore, Mom replied, and for the first time in the past 5 minutes, she sounded completely genuine. Do you know what kind of scores Harvard accepts? Stanford. Marcus has the potential for greatness, but he keeps getting distracted by things that don't matter. The recording captured the subtle shift in her voice, from calculated lies to genuine frustration. This was the heart of it all, the core belief that drove every argument, every restriction, every moment of psychological warfare. In Mom's mind, I wasn't a person with my own wants and needs. I was a project, a reflection of her success as a mother, measured entirely by achievements she could brag about to other parents. What does Marcus want? Dr. Matthews asked simply. The question seemed to catch Mom off guard. What do you mean? I mean, what does Marcus want to study? What kind of career interests him? What makes him happy? Mom's pause stretched long enough to be uncomfortable. Well, we're looking at pre-med programs. The medical field is very stable, very prestigious. Marcus, Dr. Matthews turned to me, is that what you want to study? Medicine. The question felt like stepping onto thin ice. I'd never been asked directly what I wanted to do with my life, not by Mom, not by Dad, not even really by myself. It had always been assumed that I'd follow the path they'd laid out, top university, prestigious career, successful marriage, perfect grandchildren to continue the cycle. I don't know, I admitted. Maybe computer science. Or teaching. Mom's sharp intake of breath was audible. Teaching doesn't pay enough to justify the investment in education. And computer science is so oversaturated now. But those are Marcus's interests. Dr. Matthews interrupted. They're hobbies, Mom said dismissively. Not career paths. Marcus needs to think practically about his future. The recording hit 30 minutes as I listened to Mom casually dismiss everything I'd ever shown genuine enthusiasm for. She wasn't wrong about teaching salaries or tech industry competition, but that wasn't really the point. The point was that my interests, my happiness, my actual desires were completely irrelevant to her vision of my future. Patricia, Dr. Matthews said carefully, I'm beginning to understand why Marcus might feel pressured at home. Pressured? Mom's voice sharpened again. I prefer to call it motivated. Guided. Some parents let their teenagers drift through high school with no direction, but I believe in setting high standards. And what happens when Marcus doesn't meet those standards? The question hung in the air like a challenge. I could see Mom weighing her options, admit to the explosions and risk proving my point, or downplay them and sound disconnected from her own son's struggles. We have discussions, Mom said finally. Sometimes heated discussions, because I care about his future more than he seems to. Discussions. Like the $37 mug had been a discussion. Like the screaming about Uncle David had been a discussion. My phone had been recording for 31 minutes and 18 seconds, capturing every lie, every manipulation, every moment of this psychological chess match. But I still had no idea who was winning. 4:41 p.m. The recording hit 32 minutes when everything changed. Dad's car pulled into the driveway. I heard the familiar rumble of his Honda Accord's engine, saw the flash of silver through our kitchen window, and watched Mom's entire demeanor shift like a switch being flipped. The tears were gone instantly, replaced by that bright, welcoming smile she always wore when Dad came home. Oh. Mom said, her voice suddenly light and cheerful. Michael's home early. What a nice surprise. She turned to Dr. Matthews with practiced ease. You'll get to meet my husband. He'll be able to tell you what a wonderful boy Marcus really is. My stomach clenched. Dad had no idea what had been happening for the past hour. He'd walk into this kitchen expecting his normal peaceful evening and instead find a pediatrician asking questions about our family dynamics. Mom would control the narrative completely, she'd had 17 years of practice managing these situations. The front door opened with its familiar creak. Patricia. I'm home. Dad's voice carried across the house, warm and tired. Traffic was light today, so his footsteps stopped as he entered the kitchen and saw Dr. Matthews. Oh. Hello there. Michael, this is Dr. Matthews, Sarah's mother, Mom said smoothly, moving to his side and slipping her arm through his in that gesture of marital unity she always deployed when outsiders were present. She stopped by to chat about the kids. Dr. Matthews extended her hand to Dad. Hello, Mr. Chen. I was just having a conversation with Patricia and Marcus about some concerns Sarah had. Concerns? Dad's eyebrows furrowed as he shook her hand. His gaze swept the kitchen, taking in the coffee stain on the wall, the ceramic shards still scattered near the trash can, the obvious tension in the room. Is everything all right? Everything's fine, Mom said quickly. Just teenage relationship drama. You know how 17-year-olds can be. The recording was still running at 33:47. Dad's presence felt like both salvation and catastrophe, someone who might actually listen to me, but also someone who'd never seen Mom's rages firsthand and might not believe they existed. Actually, Michael, Dr. Matthews said carefully, I was hoping to discuss some things I've observed about Marcus's emotional state. Sarah's been worried about him. Dad looked at me with genuine concern. Marcus? What's wrong, son? Are you feeling okay? The question was so simple, so direct, and asked with such obvious care that I felt my throat tighten. When was the last time someone had asked if I was okay and actually wanted to hear the answer? He's been having some anxiety, Mom interjected before I could respond. We've been working with the school counselor to help him manage the stress of college applications. Another lie, delivered so smoothly that Dad nodded along automatically. Mrs. Rodriguez had been retired for 5 months, but Dad wouldn't know that. Mom handled all my school communications. Is that why you and Sarah broke up? Dad asked me, his voice gentle. I opened my mouth to explain, but Mom squeezed Dad's arm. We had a long talk about it today, she said. Sometimes young relationships can add pressure when teenagers are already struggling with academic stress. It was a mature decision, really. Dr. Matthews was watching this performance with sharp attention. Michael, has Marcus seemed anxious or withdrawn to you recently? Dad considered the question seriously. Well, he's been quieter at dinner lately. I thought maybe it was just senior year stress, college planning, you know. He looked at me with those kind eyes that had never seen Mom's fury. Have you been struggling, Marcus? You know you can talk to me about anything. The recording captured the genuine warmth in his voice, the real concern. Dad meant it, I could talk to him about anything. But Mom was standing right there, her smile bright and her grip on his arm possessive, and we both knew she'd be listening to every word. I'm okay, Dad, I said quietly, because what else could I say with 34 minutes of evidence burning in my pocket and Mom's eyes promising consequences if I said anything wrong. But for the first time in years, I wondered what would happen if I told him the truth. 4:44 p.m. The recording hit 35 minutes when I made the decision that would change everything. Actually, Dad, I said, pulling my phone from my pocket, there's something you need to hear. Mom's face went deadly pale. Marcus, don't you dare. But I was already opening the recording app, my fingers moving with steady certainty for the first time all day. The file was there, 35 minutes and 23 seconds of truth that couldn't be rewritten or explained away. What's that, son? Dad asked, confusion clear in his voice. I looked directly at Mom as I pressed play. It's what really happened today. My own voice filled the kitchen first. I'm sorry, Mom. I'll clean it up. Then Mom's voice, sharp and vicious. Sorry. You're always sorry, aren't you, Marcus? You absolute waste of space. Dad's face went through a series of expressions, confusion, disbelief, then growing horror as Mom's recorded voice continued. Do you have any idea how much that mug cost? $37. You just keep being the same pathetic disappointment you've always been. Turn it off, Mom whispered, but no one moved. The recording played on. Her voice talking about Uncle David's suicide. The threats about calling Dr. Matthews. The forced phone call with Sarah where she'd lied about therapists and anxiety. Every cruel word, every manipulation, every moment of psychological warfare I'd endured in silence for years. Dad stood frozen, his face growing paler with each passing second. When the recording reached the part where Mom grabbed the phone from me and lied to Sarah, he actually flinched. Patricia, he said quietly, is this real? It's taken out of context, Mom said quickly, but her voice was shaking. He's edited it somehow, manipulated. It's 35 minutes long, I said, stopping the playback. Unedited. Recorded on the app, you can check the timestamps, the metadata, everything. Dr. Matthews was nodding slowly. This explains a great deal about what I observed when I arrived. Dad looked around the kitchen with new eyes, the coffee stain on the wall, the broken ceramic, my obvious anxiety. The mug, he said slowly. You threw it at the wall. Michael, you can't believe this, Mom pleaded, tears starting again. He's troubled, he's been making up stories. I recorded it, I said simply. Every word. Including the part where you made me break up with Sarah by threatening to call her mother and lie about me. Dad was quiet for a long moment, processing everything. Then he looked at Mom with an expression I'd never seen before, not anger, but something colder. Disappointment. How long, he asked her quietly. How long what? How long has this been happening? How long have you been? He gestured helplessly at my phone. Mom's silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds before she whispered, you wouldn't understand. The pressure of raising him alone while you work, trying to make sure he succeeds. Alone. Dad's voice got stronger. Patricia, I've been here every night. Every weekend. When did you start thinking you were raising him alone? The recording in my phone contained 35 minutes of evidence, but Dad's question struck at something deeper, years of Mom treating him like an absent father even though he'd never missed a dinner, never skipped a school event, never been anything but present and caring. I think, Dr. Matthews said gently, this family needs some professional support to work through these issues. Dad nodded slowly, then looked at me. Marcus, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. His voice cracked slightly. Why didn't you tell me? I glanced at Mom, who was staring at the floor, her perfect facade finally completely shattered. Because it only happened when you weren't here, I said quietly. And because I thought maybe it was normal. Maybe I really was the problem. Dad walked over and put his arm around my shoulders, the first genuinely comforting touch I'd received all day. You're not the problem, son. You never were. The recording had given me my voice back. Finally, someone was listening.